welcome back, friends and foes and Ravens fans and everybody else out there. This is Greg, the Mad Scientist Pashero, 360 Sports Network post-Super Bowl analysis. With us tonight, James Dotson, the Value Man, and Alex, the Saint, the Lamerson. Gentlemen, how goes it?
I am not happy about this at all. That's all you have to know.
What did I do to you?
The Saint seems a little devilish tonight there, Greg. I don't know. I mean...
The Saint is despondent. What's going on?
I guess so.
Is there justice in this world? Or is the
pagan
world...
for the day, okay?
What's that?
I'm a pagan for the Tonight Show, okay?
Okay. Let's talk about it here. We'll be Dr. Phil. What?
Well, we're going to get the Saint back to his sainthood by the end of this podcast. I'm going to call it right now.
All right. Yeah. All right. Let's draw it out here. What are you despondent and unhappy about there?
Look, I'm not going to be one of those conspiracy theorist fans and, trying to make an excuse for what happened in the Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. But I have never seen a more disappointing Super Bowl in my life. I have never seen officiating as bad as I saw in that Super Bowl. And it doesn't even matter because the Ravens have a Super Bowl MVP. Ray Lewis goes out as a Super Bowl MVP, so it doesn't even matter. I think that's what makes me the most upset because the San Francisco 49ers, if you look at the stats, basically outplayed the Ravens in every category, and at the end they get screwed over by a no call on the most blatant pass interference I have ever seen in my entire life. And there is questionable calls that whole game. Ed Reed's going offside on the two-point conversion, and the safety at the end of the game where the Ravens, a couple of the Ravens linemen were basically bear hugging these players, and
they're
it was
committing
ridiculous.
felonies on the sidelines. Not on the sidelines, they're committing felonies on the field, and nothing was being called. I agree with you. There's this general wave of nausea, which I actually thought was a rotavirus that I possibly caught reading some bad dip, but you know what? I don't think it was. I think it was something a little bit deeper and more sinister. What do you think about that, Dotson?
I think that there were lots of things in that game that just really were odd. What bothers me about that pass interference, and I agree, I'm not the big fan of, because basically, if you call that penalty, you're gift-wrapping the Super Bowl for the 49ers. I would say yes, let them play. But an interesting tweet came out today that in the last 5 NFL postseasons, that's 55 games, officials have only thrown 2 flags for defensive holding or defensive pass interference in the last 2 minutes of a game. That's what is ridiculous to me. I don't care how much time is left in the game. You call everything the way you call it. And what bothers me is that on the Ravens' last drive, the one right before the 49ers' failed attempt there, they drove down to get a field goal. But on 3rd down and 5, I think it was, Flacco threw a pass, and the exact same thing happened with contact on the wide receiver. The exact same contact. There was a flag thrown against the 49ers. But when it's 4th down and when it's on the last play of the game, essentially, they keep the flag in their pocket. That's what bothers me about it. Everything else I can deal with, but that's just the little odor that we talk about that keeps popping up in these Super Bowls.
And this kind of goes back to what's actually become wrong with the sport itself. If it's a penalty in the first second or the first quarter of the game, it ought to be the penalty in the last second of the last quarter of the game.
Don't even look about within a game. Look about within a season. There were probably 2 or 3 hits, fouls, stuff on the field. I mean, there was a brawl on the field that I would have seen if it was a regular season game. You probably would have seen a guy get thrown out because he went and shoved a ref out of the way. But being the Super Bowl, they didn't. I kind of like that restraint, but in a way I don't. I would rather everything be the exact same no matter what, whether it's an exhibition game or whether it's the Super Bowl, whether it's the first play of the game or whether it's the game-winning field goal attempt. Call it like it is. Who cares when it is?
What I really find highly ironic is when Goodell first entered the league as a commissioner, he was touting himself as the reformer, and he was going to change things. And his heavy-handed approach was sort of the protocol of don't mess with this guy, he's the man of change. But now it's right in front of his face, and he allows this. I just don't understand.
Well, the biggest thing that bothers me, and this does kind of go with Dotson was saying, is like I understand the whole let them play thing, but to me, let them play doesn't mean let them get away with blatantly obvious calls that impacts the game. Let's be honest. If at the end of the game Crabtree wasn't getting held, he has a good shot to make that reception. And also, it's fourth and down. It's not fourth down. It's first down with inches to go. They have 4 more tries just to basically pound it in. The Niners probably win that game. And also with the offsides on Ed Reed, again, they'd have another shot to get it in. All they'd have to do is punch it in with Gore, whoever they put in the backfield, and then it's a tie game, and then it's a whole different ball game. And to me, I just feel like the best team did not win. It was a disappointing Super Bowl, and I'm not excusing the way the Niners played in the first half, because the very first play of the game, you have illegal formation. Are you kidding me? You just kind of got the feel that the Niners are playing the way the head coach coaches, kind of antsy, little too boisterous, where they're going up against the calm and collected Ravens. And I felt like that first half really showed the demeanor of the coaches represented in the players in the first half of that game.
If you go back a podcast, I think it was a podcast ago, where we were talking about the Super Bowl conspiracies, and I basically had mentioned something about the fact that the best games are not played in the Super Bowl. The best games are generally the NFC and the AFC championships. And really, when you look at it in that regard, yeah, I think this whole Super Bowl, this particular Super Bowl, number 47, has kind of fallen along that same line. This was really just an average game at best, I thought. Rather pedestrian, it was nip and tuck, and then all of a sudden the 49ers come back, and then they kind of blow it. And it was just strange. It was just a strange game. Strangely coached, strangely officiated. The only thing not so strange about it was the halftime show.
Well, yeah, we'll stay away from the Beyonce talk. But, I mean, I don't know. I mean, not many talk out there about conspiracy. First of all, let me say this. Many people are saying out there, and I agree, the best team did not win. The 49ers were definitely the better team. Just, 2 early turnovers, and Joe Flacco doesn't turn the ball over at all. That's the difference in the game right then and there. Don't even worry about the referee at the end. But I would like to say this. There's not many who say conspiracy, but there are enough out there that we have to keep that thought in mind. And when people come out and say it, I actually had this. Alex, I want to hear your reaction to this comment. I got this on a Facebook post. Wow, I don't know how you did it, but you called that screw job at the Denver versus Baltimore game. I'm impressed, especially since I watch a ton of wrestling and should have seen it coming. What do you think?
If there was a game that was scripted, it'd be that one. And, of course, I don't know if it's really, really scripted, but another funny thing I heard of, which was on Facebook too, is that this is obviously a joke, but it still kind of makes you think. As soon as the game's getting out of reach, that Jacoby Jones, 108-yard kickoff return touchdown, someone I bet Roger Goodell was up there thinking, we got to do something, and ordered the lights to go out in New Orleans. I don't think that happened, but it was kind of funny. It's like you were watching a Buffalo Wild Wings commercial that game. It really was. That's basically how I looked at it.
You know what would make this game more interesting? If the power just all of a sudden went out on the 49ers side of the field. It was lights out on the 49ers, quite literally. And, there you go. And what's even more fishy about the whole thing, New Orleans knew about this possible issue and I guess just let it slide. It was public knowledge. But, again, just one of the many storylines about this Super Bowl that just make you scratch your head. Like, how you couldn't write this script, people.
Exactly. Hollywood cannot write this. And it's sad because I wanted the Niners to win a championship. I did not want Ray Lewis to go out, as the, quote, hero. It's just, come on, Art Modell died at the beginning of the year. all of a sudden Ray Lewis just decided to retire at the end of the season before the playoffs. NFL, in my opinion, is getting corny, and that's how I feel.
Well, let's talk about something other than this past Super Bowl then. Let's talk about moving forward. Actually, before we talk about moving forward, I should say, with the MVP being Joe Flacco, he is now, well, he basically rolled the dice huge in the offseason last year, not taking an extension, saying that he was going to prove he deserved more money. Well, he just went through 11 touchdowns in the playoffs to 0 interceptions, was the Super Bowl MVP. Now his agent comes out and says that he is deserving and demanding to be the highest paid quarterback in the National Football League. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, looking at this, I've never been a big Joe Flacco fan. From a fantasy quarterback perspective, Joe Flacco will sink your team because he's not consistent. Well, let's put it this way. One thing that he was consistent, and many times during the course of the season and many seasons past since he first started, he's always been good to put up at least 2 to 3 interceptions per game. And I know the Steelers love to play against him because of the fact that the secondary of the Steelers just love to pick him off and, of course, set themselves up for a nice touchdown. But going back to Flacco, I'd rather be lucky than good. And then this is basically where Flacco is. He got lucky over the course of the playoffs. No interceptions. Perhaps his offensive line helped him. Perhaps it was the change in offensive coordinators. Who knows? Maybe it was reindeer spray. We don't know. But
well, I would say even if I would say I don't think it is luck, because you'd have to be extremely lucky to go on the kind of playoff streak he did this year. But look, I don't think he's elite, but we got to give him the guy credit. He's been playing really well, and he just seems to be getting better. Even if he is more of a product of the team and things like that. A lot of people compare him to Roethlisberger in a way. That's fine. I don't think he should be paid as the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. I think that's ridiculous. But how old is he now? He's only 27 or something like that. I definitely think you want to keep him, because now that he has his Super Bowl, and now that he has the pressure of being, he called himself elite, I think, last year. Even though most people don't think he's elite, he got the kind of the monkey off his back. He has the Super Bowl MVP now. A lot of people don't have that, and so maybe even now he'll be playing even more confident, more cooler.
Now, but here's the thing, and this is the thing that's going to absolutely hurt Baltimore rather than help them. Baltimore right now has salary cap issues. Steve Biscotti, the owner of the Ravens, is now forced to pay Flacco more money than he ever wanted to pay him before. Now, you have a team that's seriously over cap coming into next year. And you have a guy like Flacco who's still a dangerous roll of the dice as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, he had a good last quarter of the season, or in the playoffs, or whatever you want to call that. And he won the Super Bowl, and he was the MVP. Great. But just remember this. The MVP of the Super Bowl against the Arizona Cardinals, I believe, was Santonio Holmes. And where is Santonio Holmes today?
Nowhere to be found.
I'm just saying that the monkey's off his back.
It is a monkey off the back, no doubt about it. But it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt the Ravens because the Ravens won't be able to sign the talent that they need to sustain them.
Last time they won the Super Bowl, they got rid of their starting quarterback too, Trent Dilfer, and the following year they had Elvis Gerbach.
Right.
I don't know if any of you guys remember him.
Oh, Elvis Gerbach was actually a really good quarterback, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, and it's not like, we're talking about they're going to have to lose some depth or whatever. We're talking about guys like Jacoby Jones, who, in my mind, probably should have been the MVP of that game. Anquan Bolden, who's been so great for them in especially this playoff run. Those are two guys that they're probably going to have to lose by signing Flacco to such a big deal that he's demanding, and I won't say deserving the highest, but he Super Bowl MVP. I can't argue with that.
Well,
he should definitely be up there.
I mean, they're going to draft another quarterback, and then are they going to sign one and give them another 5 years to mold a quarterback? You just don't want to go through the whole process again.
You can't get rid of Flacco. No team in their right mind would ever get rid of the quarterback that was their MVP, and that won them the Super Bowl. That is absolutely backwards. It's insane. You don't do that type of stuff.
If I'm Joe Flacco, I would actually be willing to take a pay cut to keep Bolden, to keep some of his weapons, because Dawson said it was
not that type of person.
No, he is not a Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning has done that before, and to be able to keep a Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne, because he realizes that. And guess what? I don't see Joe Flacco doing that. Now, I could be wrong, but here's my thing.
Critical to his success this season. Anquan Bolden's he's actually underrated. He's actually underrated. He's been playing out of his mind. If Flacco loses some of his key weapons, he's not going to be the same quarterback.
That's right. That's right.
Now, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but there's the talk about him being an elite quarterback. Anybody who wins a Super Bowl these days is being considered an elite quarterback. Let me ask you this. Let me give you 3 names. You tell me if you would consider any one of these guys as an elite quarterback in their day. Doug Williams, Mark Rippon. I lost it. Let me just ask you those 2 then. Mark Rippon or Doug Williams. Would you consider either of those guys as elite quarterbacks during their day?
I never really watched them, so I don't think I can really comment on it.
I've watched Rippon, and I've watched Doug Williams. Doug Williams was the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl for the Washington Redskins. He ended up playing quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers toward the end of his career.
Well, and I got to ask you this, though. Doug Williams, Mark Rippon, both Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, both MVPs of the Super Bowl. Definitely not even close to being elite during that time. Why are we calling Joe Flacco elite? I'll give him credit. He's won a playoff game now in, 4 or 5 straight years. You know, it does take something to do that, and I will give him credit for that. But you cannot call this guy anywhere close to elite in my mind when he does jack in the regular season, and until this year, he's always come up way short of performing big when the moment counts.
I don't think he's elite. I don't think you should call him elite. But you don't always need an elite quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Sometimes you just need the right fit.
Exactly, and they had the right fix with the running game with Ray Rice and Jacoby Jones. They had the right mix with Dennis Pitta. They had the right mix with Anquan Bolden and Torrey Smith. With that team, you could have had Charlie Batch as their quarterback, and they would have won the Super Bowl. Not that I love Charlie Batch. I love Charlie Batch, but you know what? He's not an elite quarterback. He's a very aged quarterback, somebody that will probably not be playing football in the future.
We are forgetting one key thing, though, about the Ravens' success, and he might not be there next year. Who is it? Ed Reed.
Ed Reed.
Yeah.
He's likely to be gone, according to a lot of sources on the internet.
And you know
where does he want to go? He actually wants to play with Bill Belichick and the Patriots.
That doesn't surprise me. That sounds like something that a high-class veteran like Ed Reed would want to go and do. And you know what? You're losing Ed Reed. You're losing Ray Lewis, supposedly. It wouldn't surprise me if he tried to come back at this point. You're probably going to lose at least one of Bolden and Jacoby Jones. This team is going to go kind of like, I think, a lot of Super Bowl teams, that they're just going to absolutely tank the next year. And it wouldn't surprise me at all. You have the letdowns to begin with, but when you lose that much talent, I don't see things looking very up for Flacco and company out there in Baltimore.
To me, Ed Reed was more important to the Ravens defense. So when did he come in? Since 2002, 2003, or something like that? Mm-hmm. But whenever he came in till now, I believe him, not Ray Lewis, was the biggest reason they had the success that they did. To me, Reed is more important than Lewis. I know Lewis had the first Super Bowl MVP, and his 3 tackles or whatever, but they can't lose Ed Reed. To me, he's a bigger star than Ray Lewis.
Yeah, and it was obvious that Ray Lewis was really, really aged. I mean, he was probably spraying the deer antler spray in the wrong part of his body, to be honest with you. His legs gave out before everything else. This guy just ended up kind of stumbling around the last quarter of the game. It was kind of an abomination watching him play out there. He should have retired about a year ago after seeing what I saw there. Ray Lewis is essentially a non-factor. Ed Reed, yeah, you lose Ed Reed, you're going to lose a lot.
Well, and I'm not trying to rip on Ray Lewis, but I think a lot of his numbers get very much overzealous. The numbers are overzealous, is the way I should say it. It was right before the end of the first half. Kaepernick was scrambling around and then kind of just slid to the ground to stay in bounds, and it was just going to run the clock out for them to kick the field goal. Ray Lewis was 2 yards away. Two other guys actually touched Kaepernick while he was down. Ray Lewis got full credit for the sack. And it's been that way all through the playoffs when I went back and looked at some of the other tape. And that just kind of bothers me all in that sort. They talk about how great Ray Lewis is with 15 tackles in a game. I went back and watched the tape. If he had double digits, it would be very surprising. He gets credit if he's 5 yards away from the ball. And, I'm not trying to rip on the guy, but there's stuff like that that really makes me wonder how good of a player he really was and how meaningful he really was for that team.
Like I said, Ed Reed, to me, more meaningful to that organization. I know I'm going to sound crazy, especially since I'm not a Baltimore guy, but I just think from an objective standpoint, Reed, the Ravens would not have gotten the Super Bowl without Reed. They could have gotten it without Lewis.
I agree.
So looking forward again, we have about 362 days until Super Bowl Sunday 2014. What do you expect to see by that time?
Well, I don't expect much changes happening. I still expect big money to win. I'm also being very cynical about things. Who do I expect to see in the game? I expect to see your perennial perennial teams in the Super Bowl. Not the Super Bowl, but in the playoffs. You plan to see the 49ers being in the mix. I think you need to plan to see Pittsburgh to be in the mix, Cincinnati to probably be in the mix. There's a lot of factors that come into play. It all starts with the age of the team. It starts with the conditioning. It starts with the draft, to be honest with you. Who's going to draft the most significant players that are going to give your team the edge to get you to where you need to be? And in both of these cases here, both the Ravens as well as the 49ers, we saw rookies or basically essential first-year players playing a prominent role in the Super Bowl itself. Colin Kaepernick, a perfect example. Here's virtual unknown coming out and making things happen here.
Lots is going to happen, that's for sure. I think you're right. You will see a lot of the big names. I'm anxious to see, and we'll be doing a NFL draft prediction podcast here in the next month or so, getting you ready for that. But I will be really interested to see how many teams might start going to this spread offense. Even though they didn't win the Super Bowl, you had 3 teams for sure using them in the playoffs, 2 of them with rookie quarterbacks, and the other one, 49ers, with a second-year quarterback who had just started. If they're getting that much success with these guys, I bet you see a lot of teams looking to possibly make that switch. You got a guy like Chip Kelly in the NFL now. You never know what can happen there. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see what draft strategies we're going to have leading up to the 2013-2014 season.
Let me ask a question here to everybody here. Is the age of the drop-back passer dead?
No, it's not. It's not dead. Look who just won a Super Bowl. You're going to see, I think, a split right down the middle. I think you're going to see half of organizations trying to implement spread offenses with pistol formations and yada, yada, yada. It's been happening. Look at the Seahawks kind of. I know Carroll kind of known for more of a pro-style offense, but there's kind of like this, there's that college type of feel to his plays. Like Doc said, Chip Kelly. But also at the same time, it all does come down to who's available. Andrew Luck, pro-style quarterback, RG3, scrambler, Wilson, spread. It depends. It honestly depends who's going to come out. And I think it will be, like I said, right down the middle because you have success on both ends. You have success with traditional quarterbacks, and lately you've been having success with these spread quarterbacks. And I remember back in the day, the old saying used to be, all you can't win with a spread quarterback. And
That's right.
you usually don't win the Super Bowl with a spread-winning quarterback. You don't.
I think one of the pioneers of the spread-type quarterback was Cordell Stewart when he was playing in Pittsburgh. Back in those days, he was running all over the place trying to make plays, and he made a lot of plays with his legs. And the biggest criticism people had of Cordell Stewart was the fact that if he just did not get antsy enough and did his checkdowns the way he should, he wouldn't have to take off like that.
Who's the last spread quarterback to win a Super Bowl?
Exactly.
Exactly. See, we're here saying, oh my gosh, the pro-style quarterback's going away. No, it's really not. You're going to see
You're
more
right.
spread quarterbacks, scrambling quarterbacks, but it still won't be the majority.
Well, and here's the thing. More and more college systems are going to the spread. They're able to have some of the smaller guys. You don't need to have a 6'5", 235-pound quarterback a la Peyton Manning. You're not going to get as many of those coming out of college because not many are running them because of that. They're trying to balance the power, and anybody can be an athlete. They like putting athletes on the field. That's what you're going to get coming up through the ranks. You won't have as many to choose from. I actually thought when, for example, when Bill O'Brien went down to Penn State, that all of a sudden Matt McGloin looked good. He might get drafted because he's a pro-style quarterback. Guess what? In 2 more years, the pro-style quarterback might be a spread option quarterback. There just is no such thing as a pocket passer anymore. It would not surprise me after the guys like Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. Once they're all gone, I would not be surprised at all if we see a majority, 70 to 80%, being spread option guys. That's just the way the NFL is. Everything changes. It's a game of different eras. We had the shotgun era. We had the single wing era. We had the pro formation, which now you don't even see anymore. Now it's going to be this pistol. Steve Young was salivating watching that game, saying, why couldn't this have been the offense when I was playing? I would have had 10 touchdowns in the Super Bowl. I
think it's just going to come down to who comes out of the draft. Where you go to high school, college, it's just a lot. It's gonna be a lot of the deep roots of where these quarterbacks are coming from, and a lot of high school quarterbacks are spread offenses. Now, I still think you can have success with a scrambling quarterback or with a spread quarterback in a pro-style offense. So, or you're gonna. I think Dotson's on to something. I just don't think it's gonna be as fast or be as effective, at least not as quickly as some people are thinking.
I'd love to have teams with 2 different types of quarterbacks that they can go and mix and match for different parts of the game based on what they want to do. Just like if you were mixing in your running back or your wide receiver, give them some substitutes out there. Why not?
Why don't we bring back the single wing?
I would love you. Hey, might as well go full circle and do it. And you know what? That might be what happens. Alex, you make a good point. There is no spread quarterback that has won a Super Bowl yet. But guess what? Put it this way.
Should have been.
Philadelphia with Chip Kelly. You know who he's looking after in free agency right now? Guy by the name of Dennis Dixon, his former quarterback at college.
You still got to be able to throw the ball. I do not think Chip Kelly is just going to be able to turn Philadelphia into Oregon. RG3, he could still throw the ball. Dennis Dixon, he couldn't even, remember when he played in 2010? He was having trouble hitting wide receivers at the knees. He was just throwing at the ground. And, it's just that.
Alex, because he was running a pro-style, quote-unquote now, pro-style offense. The fact now that they're able to run a system where you can do that zone read, you freeze the linebackers for an extra second. You don't need to be as perfectly precise as you do in a pro system. I think that it is a great fit to have him go back there, and I would not be surprised if you see them make a playoff run with Dennis Dixon as a quarterback.
You know what? And looking at this full defense of what's going on out here, there is not a lot of pro-style quarterbacks out there that can actually execute a nice drop-back pass. So necessity is the mother of invention. We need to bring forth this new phase of quarterbacking. Yeah, this might be the rejuvenation of Dennis Dixon. Yeah, I agree with that. and quarterbacks that people have given up on because they're not the right quarterback for the system that they're running, doesn't mean that these guys aren't good quarterbacks. This could be a resurrection for somebody like a Matt Moore getting in with the right group of people, or a Matt Leinart for that matter.
Anything is possible, and that's what I'm very anxious to see what happens throughout the rest of this year. But for the most part, I'm kind of glad to be away from the NFL just for a little bit so that we can get into some really fun stuff, kind of like March Madness.
I don't know. I'm still more in football mode. I wish it didn't go away.